two of them had like 95% correlation. So if you're able to determine, where it is with respect to that particular attribute, you have a very good chance of identifying which category it belongs to. Now my results for the iris problem, my PSO algorithm tended to favor separating the one linearly separable group into a group of 50, but instead of putting the other two into groups of 50, it just made it one large group of 100 instances. Now, I also checked the p-best solution, so I looked at the best solutions for each individual particle and not just the g-best. And if you look at all the p-best solutions, in fact, the algorithm sometimes does indeed come up with the ideal solution. As you can see here, I took a little cross-section. I had about 50 particles and I ran it for 200 iterations, and I experimented with parameters and iterations and number of particles. But this run had about 50 particles, and I just took a little cross-section of all the particles. Now here's the cluster assignment, so this would be cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. So as you can see, this is the G-best. It has the lowest fitness out of this column. And like I said before, it separates the first linearly separable group into its own category, but lumps all the other two all into one big category and puts nothing in the second category. But if you look at these other solutions, this particular particle actually did find the optimal solution. It has 50, 50, and 50. However, the fitness function is almost double the G-best. So the PSO algorithm that I used just didn't recognize that this was the optimal solution. Probably because this group was linearly inseparable, so it probably thought it was just better to make it one large group. But anyway, I also used it on the glass problem, which is also another benchmark problem from the UCI repository. Now this one is probably more difficult than the iris problem. It has 214 instances, and they're separated into 6 categories, and they're not evenly distributed. As you can see here, one has 70, one has 9, another one has 2, or something like that. I mean 29, sorry. And there's 9 attributes, so there's 9 dimensions these particles have to search for. So since there's more categories and more attributes, it's going to make it harder on the PSO algorithm to find the ideal solution. However, I ran it on this anyway, and as I just said, it was more difficult. Oh, and also the attributes, some of them had little to no correlation with which category the glass belonged to. So you might want to consider even doing a feature selection of only the highly correlated ones to help you solve this problem. But I used them all anyway, and my results for the glass is that the PSO algorithm that I used was less effective on the glass benchmark problem than the iris benchmark problem, which is to be expected because it is a more difficult problem. It tends to incorporate the smaller categories, the smaller clusters that had like 9, 17, into just the larger clusters like the mid-range ones, the 29 and 34. Again, not the optimal solution, but more optimal solutions than the G-best, the one the algorithm produced, were existent in the P-best solutions, but it just didn't recognize that these are better. As you can see, this algorithm took a little longer to run in MATLAB, so I used less particles to save some time. I only used 35 particles here. But the G-best, as you can see, it has no data points in this particular, in the 6th category here, and kind of evenly distributes. There's 3 in the 50s and 2 in the 20s here, which is not what we want. The ideal solution is closer to this. This one had 77 and 70, and then smaller also it had smaller categories that it assigned certain ones to, but this, again, fitness was not as good as the GBEST particle. So again, it didn't recognize that this was more optimal. Again, probably I think this is because that these data points are intertwined and they're not very easily separable, so it's easy to mistake which ones go where. Now my conclusion is that PSO clustering has a great advantage in its global search and parallel searching capabilities. Certain other algorithms like k-means is very good at local search, but not very good at the global search. And it also can only search like one at a time, whereas PSO is searching all over the data with multiple particles at one time, so that's a great advantage. However, the major problem with PSO is that it has good global search, but it doesn't have very good local search. Now how you can kind of mitigate this disadvantage is you start with a high W term, which was just, the inertia weight, like at a 0.8, and then you linearly decrease it as your iterations get higher and higher till you get towards the end, and you decrease it down to like 0.2 or so, and this helps mitigate the disadvantage of local search and helps with the local search, but it doesn't solve the problem completely. There are algorithms out there that I've read about in research that combined both k-means and PSO, and that got very good results because it utilized the global search capabilities of PSO and the local search capabilities of k-means and brought them together to form one really good algorithm. So I also found that my PSO algorithm tends to favor, even though I knew how many clusters there were going to be in the data set, and I predefined how many clusters there were going to be, it often would just put 0 data points in one of my clusters and just eliminate it completely. So it tends to favor larger clusters over smaller clusters, especially in highly dense data regions where it's going to be hard to separate those clusters. I think the PSO is a very useful algorithm, and I've done a little work with it before in some previous classes, and I really like these CI, computational intelligence, which is what CI stands for, computational intelligence, algorithms to use on clustering, because I think they're very easy to implement and they do a really good job, especially if you can refine them with some other algorithm like k-means. So I think moving forward I would even like to do my final project on something related to PSO. But thank you.